developed our approaches based upon our own experience in groups, and we approach interventions differently. There is no right or wrong way of doing an exit counseling or a consultation. We often developed an approach that suits our own personalities, and I think that it's important that families understand this, because often when they talk to different exit counselors, they're going to get different advice. And that's okay, because everyone's going to approach it in the way that is most satisfactory to them and how they think it's going to work with their family member. The most important aspect for me is preparation. And there are questions that I want families to ask themselves before they even consider talking to an exit counselor or a thought reform consultant. And the first question is the person involved in a controversial group? No, it happens to me regularly that families call me and ask me to help them out when the person's not even involved with the group. They might not like the person's boyfriend or girlfriend. So the thing is, are they involved in a group that's controversial? Some families contact me and are convinced their daughter or son is involved in group X, and they're not. And we could go through a whole preparation to get daughter or son out of group X, and they just happen to be reading a magazine. So it's important that we know first that they're in a group. And for some people that might seem odd, but the phone calls do come regularly from people who are not even in groups. The second thing is, what evidence do you as a family have that it is a controversial group? What research have you done that convinces you that there's a problem? My job is not to convince a family that they have a problem. My job is not to convince anyone that they should do an intervention. Families need to first decide that based upon research that they do themselves. We don't go running around saying, bad cult, get your kids out. That's what the groups often think we do. So the first thing families need to do is start reading magazine articles, newspapers, go on the internet, go to the library, find former members, talk to former members, find members who've left the group and were just not satisfied but don't think it's a bad group. Find members who've left the group who think it's a horrible group, so that you can get the most informed decision that you can make about approaching your child who's in the group. So education of yourself is very, very important. There are certain books that I would want a family to read. Maddie's book, Captive Hearts, Captive Minds, Dr. Singer's book, Cults in the Midst, Carol's book, Exit Counseling of Family Interventions, Steve Hassan's book, Combating Cult Mind Control, and books that are appropriate for a group. If the group is about a certain subject, then you might want to get a book about that subject, so that you know what you're approaching. One of the biggest complaints we have as exit counselors from the person we're trying to exit counsel is, my parents don't know anything about it. Why didn't they ask me? They don't know anything. They haven't done any research. And it's a very, very powerful position when the family says, yeah, I have done research. I've talked to 5 former members. I talked to the former leader of the group. I've read the leader's writings, and I've listened to 45 videotapes. I'm exaggerating a little bit, but the member goes, oh, there is some issues that mom and dad have, and they're a lot more willing to approach it. So reading the group's books is very important. The other question you need to ask yourself, are you the only person in the family system who thinks there's a problem? Does everybody else in your family agree with you? It doesn't mean that just because you're the only person that you're not right, but what other support? How do other people in the family view it? And one of the things I often do is send questionnaires out to all the different members of the family and have them each answer them individually, so we can see the different approaches of the siblings, the parents, and that's very important. You want to also obtain information on the educational side from groups like CAN, AFF, the International Cult Education Project, the Jewish Federation, your local church, trying to get as many sources of information as possible. Because often when someone comes out of a group, and I remember when I came out of a group 10 years ago, I was pretty angry at the group and maybe not perfectly clear thinking in everything I said. So you want to get as many approaches to the group as possible. If you think after doing all this research that you might want to do an exit counseling, there are different types of exit counseling. There's a very formal approach. where we go in and we actually talk to the member. There's an informal approach, or maybe it's over dinner. It may be someone talks to me on the telephone, or it's done with a clergy member, or a therapist, or friends do it. You have to decide what is the appropriate approach to reach your child. And there's no right answer. Everyone is different. And if you decide to go forward with an exit counseling, then it's important to start doing some research on the people who do this work. Interview them. And don't just interview one because you happen to like somebody on the phone. Talk to other people. Ask them for references of cases that succeeded. Ask them for references from cases that didn't succeed. Talk to as many people as possible. And there is no right person. You're going to have, most families have an intuitive sense about who's going to match with their son or daughter. Many people call me and want me to work with their child, and I think, I'm not going to be able to relate to this person. And so the exit counselor has to be able to tell you that. How do they approach that person? And you as a family have to know, is this person going to fit right with them or not? Maybe they don't like bald, short people, you know? I mean, so you have to make those decisions. After you've done that research, it's important that you establish very reasonable expectations of what is going to come out of this. And think about the ramifications of your action. Because the reaction of someone coming out of the group can be manyfold. They can come out of the group and be very happy. They can come out of the group and be very unhappy. They can stay in the group and still talk to you. They can stay in the group and not talk to you. And so those are things that you have to consider up front. Know what you're getting into in going into doing an intervention with someone. And the other thing that I think is important is that you establish a reasonable budget, because doing these things can be expensive. And you need to look at what the expense is, not just financially, but emotionally. Because what our job is to go in and present information. Once that information has been presented, it's like that's just the beginning. That's really, really the very beginning. Because what happens afterwards, that next 6 months, when the person is having a hard time, is not sure about where they want to do to make a living, they're not sure about what job they want to do, does the family have the resources to help that person through that period of time? And that's really, really important, that when people consider exit counseling, they think of what are we going to do? All right, we're going to get through this exit counseling, but when it's over with, then what? You can't expect the person to leave today and tomorrow start a new life. In a way, it's like I bring in a picture of your husband's new wife that you didn't know he had, and the other 5 kids that your husband has that you didn't know, and I present it to you and say, see? And then, now go get a job and start a new life, and you want to start a date tomorrow. It's a difficult thing for some people. And so this family has to be prepared for the other side of an intervention. The focus tends to be bang, 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 let's get them out, but then what? And that's one of the areas I think families really have to think about. And doing the preparation, reading those books that I mentioned, talking with former members, talking with the different groups like AFF and CAN, talking with rehab centers, talking with therapists, establishes a network for you as a family. So when the person does come out, you have resources at hand. You know people you can talk to. You know places you can go. It's already thought out. It's not like, oh my God, now what? You've thought about it ahead of time, and that's very, very important. Okay? Joe?